In both personal and professional settings, the ability to say no is not merely a tool. It's a vital skill that helps maintain boundaries and honor one's own values. For many women, however, this can feel particularly complicated. Societal norms often associate femininity with being agreeable, accommodating, or emotionally available, which can make assertiveness feel like a threat to those expectations. But saying no isn't about being unkind or inflexible. It's an act of self-respect and a reflection of emotional maturity. Learning to decline what doesn't serve you is not about rejection, but about alignment. It allows you to protect your time, energy, and well-being without guilt. Saying no with clarity and compassion is not only empowering, but necessary for building healthy relationships, both with others and with yourself. A thoughtful boundary is never a wall. It's a doorway to balance, authenticity, and self-trust. And as women continue to navigate complex roles and responsibilities, mastering this simple word becomes a profound expression of self-awareness and inner strength. 1. Redefining what it means to say no. There comes a point in every adult's life when the simple word no becomes incredibly powerful, not aggressive, not cold, just powerful. For many of us, especially women, that two-letter word has often felt loaded with guilt, with fear of judgment, with the possibility of being misunderstood. But saying no is not a rejection of others, it's a reclamation of self. It's a sign that we have taken the time to know our limits, to understand our values, and to protect what matters most to us. For years, many women have been taught, often indirectly, that being accommodating is admirable, that saying yes is polite. That harmony should always be maintained, even at the expense of personal comfort. But living with this mindset over time can lead to emotional exhaustion, blurred boundaries, and quiet resentment. It's not about blaming anyone for these beliefs. They've been passed down, often unconsciously, from generation to generation, but we do have the opportunity to question them now. Refusing something that doesn't align with our energy, time, or priorities isn't rude. It isn't unkind. In fact, it can be the kindest thing we do for ourselves and for those around us. Because when we commit to something out of pressure rather than purpose, we often deliver less than our best. And that doesn't serve anyone. Saying no thoughtfully and clearly is a way of maintaining integrity. It's how we ensure that our yes remains honest, meaningful, and full-hearted. But let's be clear, knowing how to say no is different from rejecting everything or everyone around us. There's an art to it. The goal is not to build walls, but to create clarity. A well-delivered no doesn't close doors. It sets the tone for healthier, more respectful interactions. It might sound like, I appreciate the invitation, but I need to take care of myself this weekend. This sounds interesting, but it doesn't align with my goals right now. I'm grateful for your trust, but I'm not the right person to take this on. These aren't excuses, they're truths. They show that we've taken the time to reflect rather than react. And in a world that often pushes urgency and instant agreement, that kind of thoughtfulness is refreshing. Moreover, learning how to say no gracefully invites deeper self-awareness. It forces us to ask, what do I really want? What are my priorities? Where do I draw the line between being supportive and being stretched too thin? These questions may not always be easy to answer, but they are essential if we want to live lives of intention rather than obligation. And perhaps most importantly, the ability to say no helps us stay connected to our authentic selves. We don't need to bend over backward to be seen as kind or valuable. We don't need to always explain ourselves in long paragraphs to justify every boundary. A clear, calm, and honest no is enough. It means we've done the internal work to trust our instincts. It means we understand that respect real, enduring respect doesn't come from overextending ourselves, but from honoring our time and energy. Of course, there will be moments when saying no feels uncomfortable. That's natural. But with practice, it becomes easier. We begin to recognize that boundaries are not barriers. They're bridges to healthier relationships where both sides feel safe and seen. So If you've ever hesitated to say no because you feared being judged, misunderstood, or labeled as difficult, remember this: your no is not a rejection. It's a decision to choose balance over burnout, truth over pretense, presence over performance. And that in itself is a quiet act of self-leadership. 2. The foundational principle of saying no gracefully: listening and understanding. In the practice of saying no with grace, listening is often more powerful than speaking. It's not just about hearing words, it's about understanding the emotions and intentions beneath them. When someone makes a request, they may not only be asking for help, they may be seeking connection, reassurance, or simply to be seen. As adults, especially in busy lives full of commitments, we can easily fall into the habit of giving quick yeses or abrupt noses without really pausing to understand the situation fully. Taking a moment to listen changes the tone of the entire interaction. It shifts the dynamic from rejection to respect. Instead of responding defensively or from pressure, you're responding from awareness, and that can make all the difference. Listening is a quiet form of care that says, "I see you. I hear you. I respect that this matters to you." When we respond with presence, the no becomes easier for both sides. A gentle sentence like, "I really understand why this matters to you, and I'm grateful you trusted me with it," shows that your refusal is not rooted in disregard, but in a realistic view of your current capacity. It helps the other person feel acknowledged, not dismissed. This doesn't mean you're avoiding the truth or bending your limits. You're simply framing your response in a way that keeps connection alive. Saying no doesn't have to be cold or final. Ultimately, listening creates space for mutual understanding. It helps transform a potentially tense moment into one of shared respect. You're not just protecting your time, you're honoring both your needs and theirs. That is the true strength of a graceful no. Using gentle and non-imposing language. Language is more than just a tool for communication, it is a bridge for emotion, a vessel for intention. The way we choose our words can shape not only how our message is received, but also how the relationship unfolds afterward. In situations where we must decline or draw boundaries, the nuance in our tone and wording can make all the difference between disconnection and understanding. When we respond with language that is gentle and non-imposing, we signal both confidence and care. Rather than using a blunt no, phrases like, "I really appreciate you thinking of me," or "that means a lot, but I have to pass this time," soften the refusal and express intentionality. These expressions communicate that the decision to decline wasn't made in haste or indifference, but with thoughtful consideration. It allows the other person to feel acknowledged rather than dismissed. This subtle shift in wording helps reduce the sting of rejection. It's not about avoiding honesty, but about wrapping it in respect. By framing a no as a mindful choice rather than a rigid refusal, we create space for mutual dignity. It shows that we are not trying to impose our limits on someone else, but simply honoring them within ourselves. This subtle shift in wording helps reduce the sting of rejection. It's not about avoiding honesty, but about wrapping it in respect. By framing a no as a mindful choice rather than a rigid refusal, we create space for mutual dignity. It shows that we are not trying to impose our limits on someone else, but simply honoring them within ourselves. Moreover, gentle language often encourages a more open and collaborative response. When people don't feel defensive, they're more likely to listen and understand. This is especially important in professional environments or emotionally sensitive settings where tone and delivery can shape long-term impressions. Ultimately, mastering the skill of gentle refusal is about intention. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. And when your words carry both honesty and warmth, you become someone who can uphold their boundaries while still holding space for connection. That in itself is a quiet kind of strength, a strength that speaks not through volume, but through thoughtfulness. A brief and honest explanation goes a long way. When it comes to saying no, offering a brief and honest reason can transform a potentially awkward interaction into one marked by mutual understanding. It's not about seeking validation for our decisions, but about fostering respectful communication. In adult interactions, whether with friends, colleagues, or family, clarity often prevents resentment. When people don't understand our reasons, they're left to make assumptions. A simple, genuine explanation can close that gap. Saying something like, "I've taken on more than I can handle right now," or "I'm working on preserving my emotional energy," is not only valid, it's responsible. It allows the other person to see that our decision is not personal or dismissive, but rather an act of self-awareness. This level of transparency can be comforting for the person on the receiving end. It tells them, "I see your request, I respect it, but here's where I am right now." Many women, especially in adult environments where expectations are high and emotional labor is often unspoken, feel pressured to say yes in order to avoid seeming unreliable or detached. But being honest about our limitations is not a sign of weakness, it's a demonstration of strength. It takes emotional maturity to recognize when we need to pull back and the confidence to voice it without over-apologizing. A well-framed explanation doesn't have to be lengthy. In fact, keeping it concise prevents the conversation from turning into a debate. It's not about defending our decisions, but about sharing enough context to be understood. Statements like, "I need to prioritize rest this week," or "I've committed to something else that requires my full attention," provide clarity without inviting negotiation. Ultimately, offering a short explanation is an act of care for ourselves and for the person we're communicating with. It shows that we're not shutting a door out of disregard, but choosing what's best for us while still maintaining respect for the relationship. It's a way of preserving both personal boundaries and human connection. And that balance is where real maturity lies. Offering an alternative solution if possible. Sometimes saying no doesn't have to mean shutting the door completely. In adult interactions, especially in professional or personal circles where relationships matter, offering an alternative solution can soften the impact of a refusal. It sends a clear message. While I can't meet your request right now, I still care about the outcome and value our connection. This small gesture can make a big difference in how the message is received. As a woman navigating responsibilities and relationships, I've found that suggesting alternatives helps maintain mutual respect. It shows that my no isn't a dismissal, but a redirection. For example, saying something like, "I can't commit to that this week, but maybe we can revisit it next Monday," or "I'm not the best person for this, but I know someone who might be able to help," keeps the conversation open and collaborative. It demonstrates empathy and intention without compromising your own boundaries. This approach is particularly useful in environments where expectations are high and time is limited. Rather than feeling guilty for declining a request, I focus on being constructive. It becomes less about rejecting someone's need and more about finding another way forward, one that honors both your limitations and their hopes. Of course, there are moments when no immediate alternative exists, and that's okay too. But when you genuinely have a suggestion, sharing it can reinforce that your decision comes from a place of care, not avoidance. People are often more receptive to hearing "not now" if it's paired with "but maybe later" or "here's another option." It reassures them that they haven't been dismissed outright. Ultimately, proposing an alternative isn't about fixing everything or people-pleasing, it's about responsible, respectful communication. It says, "I see your need, and while I can't fulfill it directly, I still want to be part of the solution." In doing so, you preserve not only your boundaries, but also the bridges that connect you to others. Maintaining personal boundaries. Maintaining personal boundaries is a vital part of emotional maturity. It's not about shutting people out, but about protecting your energy, time, and mental clarity. As adults, we often find ourselves pulled in many directions professionally, socially, and personally. Without clear boundaries, it's easy to become overwhelmed or lose sight of our own needs in the effort to please others. Saying no doesn't mean you're being cold or unkind. It means you understand your own capacity and are choosing to act within it. From my perspective, this has been one of the most empowering lessons, recognizing that I don't need to justify every decision if it's made with self-respect and sincerity. Boundaries help create balance. They allow us to give to others without losing ourselves in the process. Of course, it's not always simple. There can be discomfort in asserting limits, especially when others are used to us always being available. But each time we gently reinforce those lines, we show both ourselves and others that our well-being matters too. Over time, people adjust and they begin to understand that our no isn't rejection, but a form of self-preservation and honest communication. In the end, boundaries aren't about distance. They're about clarity. They teach others how we wish to be treated, and they remind us that we have the right to prioritize our peace. Holding that space for yourself isn't selfish, it's self-aware. The benefits of saying no gracefully. Learning to say no with grace isn't just a boundary-setting skill, it's an act of self-respect. When you decline a request clearly and kindly, you're not being difficult, you're simply acknowledging your limits. This awareness fosters a deep sense of confidence. You begin to understand that your time, energy, and well-being are valuable, and that protecting them doesn't make you selfish, it makes you wise. The more you practice respectful refusal, the more you reinforce your sense of self-worth. You stop overextending yourself just to meet others' expectations, and instead, you begin to show up in your life with more presence and intention. This clarity also has a surprising effect on relationships. While many fear that saying no will lead to conflict, it often does the opposite when done with empathy and honesty. It actually strengthens mutual respect. People start to trust that when you say yes, you mean it. You're not agreeing out of guilt or pressure, but from genuine willingness. This creates a healthier dynamic where expectations are clear and boundaries are honored. Instead of silently resenting obligations, you engage more openly and others feel safe to do the same. Moreover, saying no allows you to protect your time and energy. As adults, we're constantly managing competing demands for work, relationships, and personal growth. Without clear boundaries, we risk burnout or becoming reactive. When you say no to what's not aligned, you create space for what truly matters. This improves not only productivity but also your overall sense of balance and fulfillment. You're no longer operating from a place of depletion, but from intention and clarity. Finally, knowing how to say no gracefully sharpens your communication skills. It teaches you how to be direct without being harsh, how to empathize without overcommitting, and how to stand firm with kindness. These are invaluable tools in both personal and professional life. Whether in friendships, family dynamics, or workplace settings, the ability to communicate limits clearly and compassionately is a mark of emotional intelligence. In the end, saying no isn't a rejection, it's redirection. It's about being clear on what you can offer and doing so wholeheartedly. From this place, your confidence grows, your relationships deepen, and your life begins to reflect your true values. A balanced perspective on saying no. Saying no is often misunderstood. Some perceive it as cold, selfish, or inconsiderate, especially in cultures or communities where self-sacrifice is valued as a virtue. But the reality is far more nuanced. From a thoughtful, adult perspective, saying no is not an act of rejection. It's an act of self-preservation. It is about honoring your emotional, mental, and physical limits so that you can remain present, grounded, and authentic in your relationships. As women, we are often taught to prioritize harmony and avoid disappointing others, even at the cost of our own well-being. But always saying yes doesn't make us more loving, it simply makes us more vulnerable to burnout. There comes a point when constantly accommodating others leads to exhaustion. You find yourself overcommitted, emotionally depleted, and disconnected from your own needs. In trying to be everything for everyone, you begin to lose sight of your own voice. That's where the power of saying no, with intention and empathy, truly matters. It's not about pushing people away. It's about drawing respectful boundaries that allow for mutual understanding and growth. Setting limits doesn't damage relationships. Rather, it provides the clarity needed to sustain them in a healthy way. When you say no gently and sincerely, you send a message not of dismissal, but of self-awareness. A simple phrase like, "I really appreciate you thinking of me, but I need to take care of a few priorities right now," communicates honesty and respect. It acknowledges the request while remaining true to your capacity. People may not always like hearing no, but they often respect the clarity it brings, especially when it's delivered with care. Over time, this kind of honest communication builds trust, not resentment. It's also worth acknowledging that not everyone sees refusal in the same light. While some may interpret it as a lack of support, others will view it as a sign of strength and integrity. Either way, what matters most is that your actions align with your values. Saying no allows you to remain centered, to engage in relationships without resentment, and to create space for what genuinely matters to you. Conclusion, a thoughtful reminder for women. Learning to say no gracefully is not a simple skill. It is a personal evolution. It represents a deeper journey of self-awareness and self-respect that every woman deserves to cultivate. In a world that often glorifies constant availability and compliance, choosing to say no can feel uncomfortable, even rebellious. But the truth is, it is neither a rejection of others nor a rigid stance. Rather, it is a sign of emotional maturity and a powerful expression of self-love. By saying no with intention and care, you're not turning away from connection. You're protecting your energy so you can engage more meaningfully. It allows you to manage your time, preserve your mental well-being, and stay true to your personal values without compromising your relationships. This doesn't mean becoming inflexible or distant. It means practicing discernment and showing up in your life with authenticity. Respecting your limits is a form of wisdom. It honors your priorities while still making space for compassion and understanding. When you say no with clarity and kindness, you invite others to see you not as someone who avoids responsibility, but as someone who knows her worth and stands by it gently. This isn't just a communication tactic, it's a life philosophy. One that encourages you to build healthier relationships, not just with others, but with yourself. So, as women, let's remind ourselves, saying no is not selfish. It is thoughtful. It is healthy, and it is necessary. It's not about distancing ourselves from people. It's about coming closer to who we truly are. After all, the more we learn to say no with grace, the more we make space for the yeses that truly matter. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.